Hi, welcome back. Chapter 13, Section 1, Part 2. When last we met, we were talking about painters studied human anatomy and drew more observing models, resulting in more accuracy. We also talked about perspective. This is a picture done in the Middle Ages. You'll notice how incredibly flat it is. There's nothing in the background, nothing to draw you into the picture. You might also notice that it's not exactly realistic looking. The hands are a little longer than you would expect on a person of this size. Fingers aren't very long. Over here, the fingers are probably too long. It's just not very realistic. I'm not really sure how this person is standing either. This looks a little strange. Um, Not very realistic. Whereas in the Renaissance, uh, realism going back to classical styles. Leonardo da Vinci was an artist and inventor. He is a Renaissance man. He studied botany, so that's the study of plants, optics, so the study of the eye and visuals, anatomy, architecture, and engineering. The mysterious smile of the woman in his painting Mona Lisa has intrigued viewers for centuries. Um, I've never really been impressed with the Mona Lisa. In fact, if you see it for yourself, it's an incredibly small painting. You don't expect it to be so small. But notice the background. It looks like this picture was painted with her in front of a lake. Is that water back there? It looks like it's back there. That's kind of the point. Whereas this is a flat canvas, but it looks like the Mona Lisa herself is in front of this landscape, which is incredible. That's using perspective. Leonardo da Vinci's sketchbooks are full of ideas for inventions such as flying machines and submarines. He was way ahead of his time, whereas he did not exactly get anything to take off, and he probably didn't exactly use the submarine. He did have ideas for these. He had a sketchbook where he put all of his different ideas. If he could get the funding, maybe it's something he would try in the future. He also made sure that he wrote down all of his notes backwards. So you had to look in a mirror to decipher his notes because he didn't want anyone to steal his ideas. So he's pretty ingenious. We call him the Renaissance man. It's also Da Vinci who came up with the idea of symmetry of the human body. This is his Vitruvian Man. The drawing itself is often used as an implied symbol of the essential symmetry of the human body. If you go from fingertip to fingertip, that should be how tall you are. So pretty cool. And by extension, the symmetry of the universe as a whole. So looking at the whole world instead of just the religion that the Middle Ages seemed to only look at. Michelangelo was a sculptor, an engineer, a painter, an architect, and a poet. He thought of himself more as a sculptor and an architect, I believe, than a painter. He is best known for sculptures such as David and for painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. We're going to look at pictures of both. He also designed the dome for St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome, the dome going back to ancient Roman architecture. So here is Michelangelo's David. It's incredibly realistic. Just look at the detail in the air, which is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And the Sistine Chapel, which is in the Vatican right now, he is credited with painting the entire ceiling, which is amazing. Most of the time we teach that he painted it lying on his back. However, from what I've read recently, he established scaffolding and platforms so that he and the other painters that he had helping him with this could reach up and paint. However, you've got to figure it's still going to be very tiring to paint something like this. It takes about 4 years. Also, you've got to figure paint's going to splatter in your face and your eyes. I don't believe his eyesight was ever that great after this entire chapel ceiling was painted. Now, the patron that paid him for this was the Pope, Pope Julian VI, I believe. I need to check that out. The Pope was a patron of the arts. He had lots of money. Now, you don't think of the Pope as having lots of money to spend on whatever he wants, but in the time of the Renaissance, that's the way it was. The Pope was also the ruler of the Papal States. If you remember back to the map of what's now Italy, Papal States was a city-state. It was one of many that make up now the country of Italy. If the Papal States went to war, and they did, the Pope could possibly be on horseback leading his army into war. Not how we think of the Pope today. And for reasons such as this, the Pope being very extravagant, spending lots of money, and so on, there is going to be something called the Reformation. People want to get back to a simpler time, worshiping God in a simpler way. And that is the next topic after the Renaissance. This is Raphael's Madonna, one of many Madonnas that Raphael did. Virgin Mary with child. If you notice, this is the first thing I notice about this, is that is one hefty baby. Reason being, nowadays, fashion tells us that it's good to be thin. I'm not saying that's a good thing. That's simply the way people view beauty nowadays. Back in the time of the Renaissance, if you were a little heftier, if you had some meat on your bones, you were considered more beautiful because it proved that you were probably well off. You had the means to eat as much food as you preferred, and that made you more attractive in this day and age. So Raphael's Madonna, this is one of many that he did. Writers were also humanists. Some described how to succeed in the Renaissance world. The humanist writers of the period basically wrote how-to manuals. So Baldassare Castiglione's book of the Courtier described the manners and behavior of the ideal aristocratic man and woman. In other words, how to behave if you are at court. Now, being at court means that there is a king or a high-ranking noble at the top, and you are in their court. You are trying to be your best for that king or that noble. If you are a man, you play music so you can amuse the king. You know literature, you know history, you know a lot about many things. However, you are not arrogant in this knowledge. You don't come across as, ooh, look at me. I know so much. I must be very important. You hide those feelings if you have them. Women are kind, graceful, and lively. They possess an outward beauty because, according to the Renaissance world, if a woman was beautiful outside, that meant she's beautiful inside. We view things differently nowadays. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder is one of the sayings we use. We also consider someone can be beautiful inside, and that's what's most important, whether we consider her beautiful outside or not. So different ways of viewing things back in the Renaissance and different than what we view them today. Niccolo Machiavelli's The Prince was a guide for rulers to gain and maintain power. Once again, a how-to manual for a ruler of the time period. Rather than discuss high ideals, he stressed that the end justifies the means. Now, let me explain this. Meaning, if you're a ruler, if you're a king or a high-ranking noble and you're in charge of a city-state, you need to do what's necessary to get the result you want. So if it means lying to your people, then you lie. The end justifies the means. If the lie gets you what you want, it gets you a law passed, it gets you higher taxes, whatever it may be, then you lie to the people. So not the way we'd like to view politicians today. We'd like to think that they have some moral compass and they rule by ethics. According to Machiavelli and The Prince, and he's writing based on what he has observed, the rulers with the most power are the ones that do whatever they have to do, whether it's murder, whether it's lying, to get what they want and what they need to rule. The term Machiavellian has come to refer to the use of deceit in politics, yes, unfortunately, still very much around today. Critics saw Machiavelli as cynical, however, others, me included, think that he is providing a realistic look at the politics of his day. This is a question that is in The Prince. It's in the book The Prince, written by Machiavelli. Upon this, a question arises, whether it be better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved. We're going to talk about this specifically in class, meaning should a prince, a ruler, want to be loved by his subjects or feared? Which is more important? Which will make him the stronger ruler? So come to class ready to discuss this quote from Machiavelli's The Prince. In 1455, Johann Gutenberg printed a complete edition of the Bible using a printing press with movable type. Remember, in the Middle Ages, we had monks sitting for hours and hours and days and months copying manuscripts, and that's the only way you came up with a book, and it would take an incredibly long period of time. Now, using movable type, you can print books so much faster. The first book he will print is going to be the Bible, still on the bestseller list today. Printed books were far easier to produce than hand-copied books, much faster. More people had access to a broad range of learning. More people will learn how to read, although not as many people as today. And there will be more books out there for them to read. By 1500, the number of books in Europe had risen from a few thousand to between 15 and 20 million. Keep in mind, for the next section, the Reformation, with the coming of the printing press in Europe. Now, Gutenberg was the first to invent it in Europe. The Chinese already invented a printing press. But with the printing press in Europe, ideas can spread that much quicker. Where people have tried to reform the church in the past, John Wycliffe, Jan Hus had ideas about how to reform the church. It never got off the ground because it was hard to spread their ideas and actually get people viewing things the same way they did. It was hard to organize. But with the printing press, the Reformation is going to take off, and we're going to learn about Martin Luther and the Reformation in the next section. Thank you.